Liberal MP David McGuinty is the chair of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, and he's with me now. Mr. McGuinty, good to see you again. Thanks for coming to talk to me about this report today. It focused on the intelligence activities of the Department of National Defence, at least in one part. You are recommending clear legislative authority for DND to conduct operations. As I read this report, why? What's the issue you think needs to be addressed here?
We're asking the government to give serious consideration, Peter, to that possibility. DND has a legislative basis for its activities in the intelligence sphere. It draws most of its authority from an old concept called the Crown prerogative. It's a residual power vested in the government, i.e. vested in the Crown. It's an old Commonwealth concept, English law concept. And we're saying that events may have overtaken the activities at the department. The department is the only, by its own admission, is the only full spectrum department in the country that performs everything that CSC, CSIS, and the RCMP does. So we're asking folks to take a closer look.
And they do have a legislative framework, a clear legislative framework.
They do.
Right?
They have an act, four corners of a statute within which to operate. That evolved over time. In 1981, the McDonald Commission recommended that CSIS, or the activities then of the RCMP, be more carefully constrained or put into a legislative setting. And that's, for example, where it started. And CSE then was spun off from that Crown prerogative power into its own legislative basis.
Okay, but so if DND has been operating this way for all these years, why are you recommending the change? What is it you've seen, and I know you're limited in some of the things, what is it you've seen in the way they operate that you think requires a little more, what's the word, a little more firmness to the process, a little more guidance or direction or even restriction?
Got it. Let's be clear. We've seen nothing unlawful in our examinations. 4,500 pages of material, 8 months of deliberations and research and analysis, dozens of meetings between our researchers, our analysts, and DND, many appearances and visits with the committee. So we've seen a lot, but we've seen nothing unlawful. We've seen nothing illegal. What we have seen, though, is an expansion of the activities. We've seen in the plan that the department itself has 300 to 400 more personnel in the intelligence sphere. So these are important questions for us to examine. We've set out really clearly in the report, Peter, the sort of pros and cons, the risks and the benefits. We captured those risks very objectively on behalf of the department and the Canadian Armed Forces, and we've then reacted to it, and it's all there in black and white.
Yeah, I think it's reluctant to go that route. I think they said that to your committee, that they don't really want a legislative framework. Why not?
I don't recall them saying that.
Okay.
I think what they presented instead were objectively what they believe to be the risks in proceeding that way.
Of having to submit to a legislative framework.
Yeah, they're there. They're captured verbatim in terms of the actual submissions that were brought to us. And then we've reacted to those submissions. We wanted Canadians to see very plainly where they see the constraints, where they see the risks, and we're talking about the benefits.
Okay, so to be very clear here, so they operate now under a legislative guidance of some kind, but what is the concern of the committee? Is it so far it's been okay, but if we don't make the change, you think there's a potential for problems to
part of the deliberation, Peter, for sure. And it's not only that they only have the Crown prerogative as the basis, they also have another construct internally called a nexus. We talk about this at length in the report. They say that they can't take on military intelligence activities unless it's somehow related or connected to the operation. There's got to be a nexus or connection between those two, the operation and the intelligence. We accept that, but we also make a number of recommendations to enhance what that nexus looks like. So we have said in the recommendation, we are asking the government to give serious consideration to this possibility. And that is a carefully crafted recommendation. That's the end result of hours of deliberations amongst all the party members, both houses on that committee.
Okay. How much of the military's operations, intelligence activities, if you can say this, how much of their activities are domestic and how much are foreign?
I can't say that.
Okay, but you know it.
We know some things, but I can't say that.
Okay, and in that context, while I stay on the military, I think you're planning another examination of whether. What is that examination that you're going to look at the relationship between DND intelligence operations and I'm assuming the rights of Canadian citizens, or how they're affected? What is it you're looking at?
That's right. So that rights, privacy, charter rights all that perspective is brought to bear, Peter, on all of our reviews, special or annual reports, always. So in the work that we've been doing in this 2018 report, we came across a directive from basically the intelligence unit or directorate inside the Department of National Defense that speaks to how and when and why the D&D would be using intelligence activities with respect to Canadian citizens.
Right.
So we're going to really bore down. We're going to go down deep and look at this very carefully. That's part of one of the special reviews we're doing right now that we hope to plan to deliver before the House is dissolved. So we found this out in October 2018 as part of our annual review process. It came to us late. It was an inadvertent omission on behalf of the D&D. We accept that explanation, but we're now going to take a very close look at this.
Okay, so that's still to come. Well, let's talk about another one of your key areas of study. You looked at how the government sets intelligence priorities. What did you find? And what are you recommending?
So why do we do this, first of all? We did it, Peter, because it's where it all starts. Cabinet makes the decisions. Cabinet approves the priorities, and from those priorities, you can imagine, from the top of the pinnacle, flows the distribution of those priorities, the resourcing for the work that goes on, and the personnel to backstop it. So we took a long, hard look at what goes on at the crow's nest level in the government, because we feel we have a framework responsibility as a committee, and this hasn't been done. In 25 years, this hasn't been done, and by the way, on D&D, it has never been subject to an external review. So this 25-year, first time in 25-year review on intelligence priorities sought to examine how well are we doing this? What kind of information is Cabinet getting? Are they getting the right information? Is it being presented to them in such a way that they can trust it, rely on it? Because we're making some pretty tough decisions in this country.
And is it?
We believe the system is sound, but we've made a series of recommendations to improve it that we think will go a long way, not the least of which is to have the National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister take a more pronounced leadership role in pulling this together. Here's one of the challenges, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, what's the consequence of not doing what you're recommending?
Well, the consequence
is that there's can you really have 400 priorities? Is that
That's part of the problem. These strategic intelligence requirements have grown over time. A lot of frontline practitioners in the security and intelligence community have told us this is problematic. What's at risk? Not getting it right. Not having the right priorities, not having the right funding for those priorities, not having the right personnel for those priorities. And that's why we wanted to stop and, yes, start at the top, but at the same time, as I said earlier in the press conference, get into the engine room. And that's what we tried to do in the report.
Okay. Let me talk about something else I think you raised at your news conference today, because we are in an election year, and a lot of people are talking about potential foreign threats to the Canadian democratic process, to the electoral process. What can you tell me about what you're doing on that?
Well, we have announced a major review of foreign interference in Canada. We've already started that work. It was announced for our 2019 work plan. We're not focusing directly on the question of electoral integrity. We're not focusing on, for example, the question of approving foreign takeovers when it comes to foreign corporations. We are very much focused on the activities of foreign states in Canada. What are they doing? How are they doing it? What effect is it having on Canadian institutions? What effect is it having on members of that country's diaspora in Canada, for example? You know,
it would be hard to think that won't somehow speak about or at least raise for us some understanding about where the threat to the process may come. And when do you plan to deliver that?
Our plan is to deliver that before the House rises or is dissolved for the election.
Okay.
So we're under really tight timelines and constraints. And you're right, as we continue with this research, remember, receiving thousands and thousands of pages of research on a weekly basis. So it's going through it is difficult. But one of the privileges of this committee, Peter, is we get to look at it right across the whole breadth of the community. We're not, stuck on one actor. We can look at all of them in concert to see how well it's working. So we'll have more to say about this going forward.
Okay, let's finish on this. There's been lots of debate over whether having elected officials oversee security agencies is the right way to go. What can you tell me after the brief amount of time that the committee's been sort of in existence and working? How have your inquiries, your interventions been received by the intelligence
extremely well
agencies?
Extremely
are they happy to have this process, do you think, or resistant to it?
It's a learning opportunity for some, and others are strongly embracing it. It really depends. For example, D&D has never been subject to review in the past, any element of its operations. So it was a learning opportunity. You know, fostering and building trust and relationships was important and remains important.
Some people would hear learning opportunity and say it was a, I know you don't like this, but get with the program. You're not saying that.
No, I don't think so. In fact, one thing I can say is that when we turned our sights on D&D to begin this intelligence review, they immediately set up a unit within the department which didn't exist previously to deal with external review. Very encouraging, very helpful. Look, the committee has been working extremely well. I mean, just to give viewers an idea, in the 2018 year, Peter, we met 54 times, an average of 4 hours per meeting. This is a very elaborate, detailed piece of work. The committee's working extremely well together. We park our partisanship at the door. The reports are entirely unanimous, so we're really, really proud of this work, and we're encouraged.
All right, looking forward to talking to you again. Dave McGuinty, good to speak with you.
Thank you very much.